We've arrived at a Gaudete Sunday. Gaudete meaning rejoice, the opening antiphon of the liturgy, rejoice. And it's a reminder that, Christmas is only 10 days away. And in the gospel, John the Baptist is now in prison. And it's kind of a mystery. He sends his disciples to ask Jesus this question: are you he who is to come, or should we look for someone else? And you're like, what? Wait a second. Earlier in the Gospel of Matthew, John seemed so sure there at the banks of the Jordan. This is the one. This is the Lamb of God. I saw the dove descending upon him, saying, "This is my beloved Son. In him I am well pleased." Now he sends the guys, his disciples, over to Jesus with the question, why? Well, we don't know for sure. Maybe he wanted his disciples to know as clearly as he did, or maybe there were some expectations he had of the Messiah, and he wasn't connecting with what I think he should be doing and what is being done. Because Israel is not a free, independent, standing nation, and that was maybe some of the expectation. And so he sends them with that question. And Jesus responds, "Tell John, the blind see, the deaf hear, the lame are restored to mobility, and the dead live again." These are miracles. Miracle is a suspension of the laws of nature, something that doesn't normally happen, something that even secular science strives to explain yet can't. Miracles, these wonder workings that Jesus is doing to send back to John, these things are happening. And if you remember those ancient prophecies, you'll make that connection. Well, this week, somebody on Facebook was slamming the new Jeep. I don't know, sometimes I feel it's my job to correct people. I don't exactly remember what he was saying, but he said something like it was trash or whatever. And you're like, hey man, those are my wheels. So I went to his Facebook page. I want to see where people are coming from. Now, he didn't directly send this to me. It's on a Jeep Facebook page. And they premiere some of the new things that are coming out and so forth. And I looked on his Facebook page, and he's really into fly fishing and outdoors. Beautiful pictures. I don't see a single four-wheel drive. And he apparently likes road bikes. And I responded, well, how can you weigh in on this vehicle if you don't have any experience at all? And his response was, maybe you should stick to telling people about biblical fairy tales. Are these miracles biblical fairy tales? Some people think they are. Even some theologians in the Catholic Church that teach in seminaries will gloss over the miracles. Oh, the miracle of the loaves and fishes. Oh, the miracle is that we got people to share. Ridiculous. That is not a miracle. That is not a suspension of the laws of nature. And you got all these thousands of people. You've got 12 wicker baskets left over. That's the leftovers. Where were they keeping all the loaves and fishes? In their pockets? Biblical fairy tales. People are out in the pews, same thing. Are these biblical fairy tales? You know, if it weren't for Jesus' wonder working and miracles, we are fools to sit in these pews on Sunday. We might as well sleep in with St. Mattress and call it good. Because the resurrection from the dead is the greatest miracle in the entire universe. And you know what? It just doesn't happen. It doesn't. You put somebody on a cross up there, they've been lacerated to the point of death, and you hang them up there, and they're up there for a long time until basically you expire. You don't come back from that. Some of these people, the Jesus conspiracy is Jesus recovered. Wow, do you know anybody that recovered from crucifixion in history? The Muslims are still crucifying people in places like Syria. Did those folks recover? No. Biblical fairy tale? No, they're not. Friends, the question is asked of us. Are you Jesus, he who is to come? Or do I look for something else? Or am I looking for something else? I remember when I was away from the church and I was going to work, I was working second shift in Phoenix on truck engines. And I was on that freeway. And it was just a madhouse. Back and forth on that freeway, second shift. It's like, I said to myself, in that emptiness that I felt, there's got to be something more than this. This is what they told me to do, to be happy, to work my way up, to make money, to have nice things. And there's something big missing. There's got to be something more than this. And maybe that's what we're looking for. We're out there looking. Where is it? What am I supposed to be looking for? Are you he who is to come, or do we look for something else? Miracles. Oh, biblical fairy tales. Really? Have you seen one? Because they're out there. You can go and see them. There's one as close as New Mexico. The Loretto staircase in the Loretto chapel in Santa Fe. 1800s. The nuns had built this chapel, and there's a upper choir loft. And they built it in such a way that they didn't have enough room to put a stairway in there. And they're like, well, how are we going to have these nuns wearing habits climb up a ladder to get into the choir, into the choir loft? We're going to have to tear down part of the chapel, and it's going to cost a lot of money. What do? They prayed to St. Joseph, a novena. 9 days later, this very unusual carpenter shows up. And he works and he works and he works and he builds this double spiral staircase. And he disappears. The Mother Superior said, well, I can pay the wood supplier at least. This guy didn't stick around for his paycheck. They go to the wood supplier. There's been no strange carpenter come to us. Modern studies show that the wood is not native to New Mexico. That it should not be able to stand on its own weight. It doesn't have a central supportive pole through the middle. It should collapse under its own weight. But there it is, 150 years in the Loretto Chapel. You can go and see it. Just a few days ago, we celebrated the feast of Our Lady of Guadalupe. Years ago, somebody from here, I don't see her anymore, I don't know what happened, but she said she didn't believe in the miracle. She was a Mexican woman, an immigrant. Oh, it's something the Spaniards made up to bring people to Christ. It's like, no. They've done continual studies on the tilma of Our Lady of Guadalupe. They cannot identify how the pigments are deposited on the fibers. They cannot explain how there are reflections in the irises of the image because paintings simply don't have that. They can't explain how the cactus fibers have not disintegrated after 400 years. Someone came into the basilica at one point and put a bomb in there to blow it up. The image was unhurt, but there's a candelabra in a museum there that's all bent to pieces because of the bomb. There it is in Mexico for everyone to see. Scientists can't explain it. They don't see an underlying sketch under the image. They can't identify what those pigments are. Yet there it is. The Shroud of Turin is one thing I have not seen. Father Jerry loved it. He, on Good Friday, would pass out booklets about the mystery of the Shroud of Turin. The church has not definitively said that this is an image of Jesus Christ, but it's a mystery who else it would be. It's a burial shroud that somehow has like a negative, well, maybe the young people don't know what a negative is in photography, but it's like a negative image of a snapshot of somebody that was in that shroud after burial following crucifixion. It's there. They can't explain it. There's a group of us pilgrims about 5 years ago, maybe a little more now, that went to a place that's south of Fatima to see a Eucharistic miracle. Now, our tour guide obviously wasn't a believer, because the way she was describing it on the microphone as we took the bus through the city streets is like, well, you know, people say this and you know people say that. And I'm like, lady, I'm gonna bip you upside the head. Because there's a whole bus of people that cannot wait to see this. We didn't even know it was on the itinerary. We're like, what? We're gonna go see a Eucharistic miracle? We went through those cobblestone streets. We entered the chapel. This miracle took place 700 years ago. You walk into the chapel and there's this aroma of roses. Someone said, oh, maybe it's incense. And it's like, well, I use rose-scented incense and it never has quite this fragrance. We asked the steward there, he said, no, that aroma has been there for a long time. And you go in back behind the reredos and you climb up a ladder and you look at the Eucharistic miracle. It's encased in like crystal. And there's a host there and you can see splotches of blood. 700 years ago, this woman wanted her husband to be faithful, but he wouldn't be. So she goes to a witch. And she says, what can I do to make my husband be faithful? She says, get me one of those hosts, those consecrated hosts from your church, and I'll do something to make your husband faithful. She goes to church, receives Eucharist, takes it out of her mouth, wraps it in her chapel veil, and decides to sneak out. And people notice, they're like, hey, you got blood dripping from your hand. Are you okay? And she's like, whoa, I don't know what's going on. So she just kind of covered it up, and there's a blood trail all the way to her house. Didn't know what to do. She put the Eucharist in a trunk. Went to bed. Husband came home, went to bed. In the night, this glowing radiance emanates from the trunk. They open it up, and it's coming from that host. They knelt in prayer all night and came and got the priest. The priest encased it in wax and put it in the tabernacle, and the next day the wax had fallen away, and this crystal encasement formed around this, and they put it in a monstrance. It's pear-shaped. It's been on display for 700 years. Are you he who is to come, or do we look for someone else? Tell my followers, there's a staircase. There's an image of Our Lady of Guadalupe. There's an image of the Shroud of Turin. There is a Eucharistic miracle, and it can go on and on and on and on. Friends, as we receive him today, let us respond, yes, you are he who is to come.